Were we an union earlier too? Was it Akhanda Bharat or was it Khanda Bharat? Was it just a conglomerate of certain kingdoms which are all disparate? To be more clear on this, if somebody went back to the map of Europe in 1400, 1300, 1200, 1100, even before actually, you would see that they were all actually small kingdoms spread out here and there, and then each of the kingdoms had nothing to do. In fact, when you not just Europe, when you look at Africa, when you look at South America, North America, when you look at all these continents, you would find that there was no concept of one nation anywhere except this wonderful nation called Bharat. And I'm going to try and then tell you why it was one nation. Right? So let us look at why is ancient Bharat called Bharatavarsha. Most of you would be aware that there were 7 dvipas according to our Indian scriptures. There are 7 dvipas, and that's why it was called Sapta Dvipa Vasundhara. Vasundhara means, of course, Mother Earth, and Sapta Dvipa is 7. Now, these 7 are pretty much analogous to the continents we have. They are the continents because the last tectonic plate movement was found somewhere about at least 200 million years ago or more. So after that, tectonic movements are always happening, but the last, what you can call the continent merging happened only about 200 million years ago, and it is not foreseen that much is going to happen, because even as scientists and then researchers predict, in 50 million years down the line, they in fact predict that there's going to be a reunion of the continents, because what started apparently 100 million years ago as one nation, one landmass on this Mother Earth, then got, because of the tectonic plate movements and etc., started getting bifurcated, and then they started forming the various continents, which we call the 7 continents today. And then they were referred to as 7 dvipas in the Indian literature, scriptures. So the 7 were Jambu Dvipa, which is normally today known as Asia; Plaksha, which is most commonly known as South America; Shalmali, which is most commonly known as Australia; Kusha, which was that landmass, the islands landmass of the Indonesia, the Malaysia, you have the Thailand, and then so all these places put together there, that's the Kusha. Krauncha is the North America, Shaka is the Europe, and Pushkara is the Africa. So this is how actually the 7 continents were called and identified way back in Indian Vedic literature. And this Jambudvipa, which is the Asia that we know of today, the Jambudvipa, it was divided into 9 varshas. Okay. And a varsha, what is the definition of a varsha? What is the definition of a khanda? We'll try to briefly touch upon. Though they're not of too much of significance to talk today, but they are geographical regions. And the place where we are is what's called Bharatavarsha. Now, broadly speaking here, I can say that the Varsha Khanda was, which also comes in our Sankalpam. Khandam is seen as a sub-region of a Varsha. Varsha almost contained certain unlivable areas too. For example, Bharatavarsha, they say, not only included all that we know right now, but it also included probably a lot of desert regions and then certain forest regions which were unlivable in those days, but still which were coming under the rule of a certain Bharatavarsha. And Bharata, as we know, comes from the ancient Bharata. We know how the name of the Bharat India came, Bharata Vamsha. And then not getting into that part of history, mythology, Bharatavarsha is where actually the livable part or the countries were made. Somebody's microphone has to be muted. May I request, please? Please, can you please mute? Okay, thank you. So, and the other 8 varshas within this Asia region of Jambudvipa were actually Ketumala Varsha, Hari Varsha, Ailavrata Varsha, Kuru Varsha, Hiranyaka Varsha, Ramyaka Varsha, Kimpurusha Varsha, Bhadrasva Varsha, which actually tells us that what sort of deep understanding Indians had. The word Indians I'm using very loosely, I wouldn't want to use, but Bharatiyas is the right word, had about not just Indian part where we lived, but all of the parts in those days. Right? Okay, so now, Most of you who do your daily sankalpa would know that this is how it normally reads. Adya Brahmana Dvitiya Pararde, Shweta Varaha Kalpe. So the beautiful chronology in which the beautiful funneling approach that our people took in terms of coming almost from the macrocosm kind of situation, context to microcosm context. Adya Brahmana, Dvitiya Pararde, what is the level of the Brahmana, and then what is the level of the Varaha Kalpa that was going on, Sveta Varaha Kalpe, what is the Manvantaram that was going on, Vaivasata Manvantare, there's a time and a space context that was being brought in, and Kali Yuge, the time division, Pradhama Pade, which part of that specific Pradhama Kali Yuga, then coming to the GPS, the localization of the position where we are sitting, Jambu Dvipe, Bharatavarshe, Bharatakande. Right, so the Asia the Asia continent, out of which Bharatavarsha, the larger landmass, and then the smaller landmass, Bharatakande. And then we would not stop there. We would go on. Suppose I was doing it sitting in Hyderabad here, Mero Dakshina Digbage, Shishala Sivayo Pradese, Ganga Godavari Madhyadese, something, Swagruge, and then we go on. So whatever that might be, the technology these people had in terms of on a daily sankalpam which you do before you do puja every day. It starts with the almanac, and then it starts with the space and time context, the coordinates being fixed in terms of the longitude, latitude, and the time. All dimensions are touched, and then that is how it comes. But of keen importance to us, though this touches base upon the kind of Samskriti we had, it touches base upon something that we are talking called Bharatavarshe Bharatakande is not a new thing that we are talking about. It was a Varsham, it was a Kandam, it was one thing, it was being talked about from those days, right? As early as when the Sankalpam was even created. Now, is Bharat one Rastram? Let us look at it. Why do we call our head of the country Rashtrapati and not some Deshapati or some other Pati? Okay, now, in many local languages like Telugu even, the word Rastram refers to a state the way we use it today. Even in fact, some of the Rastrams have the Rashtra included in the Maharashtra. Okay, so Rastram doesn't refer to anything like a state or a country. Rastram actually refers to a kingdom, an assemblage of people who are all in certain boundary. So Rastram broadly was always referred to for the country. And that's why we call our representants Rashtrapati. Now, what was talked about Rastram? The ideas of Rastram were found in Rigvedam, Krishna Yajurvedam, and Agni. In fact, a verse in Krishna Yajurvedam says, whenever there is a conflict between the individual interests of any citizen and the interest of the Rastram should prevail. Now, this kind of diplomatic consciousness, the constitutional, the political consciousness the Rishis had was amazing. And then they knew exactly, they had written down within these Vedas, they had written down why we need to, how people need to conduct themselves and how the polity should work. Okay, so I'm checking, Narayanji, are you able to hear me? Because I see that my internet is a little unstable. It is saying, are you able to hear me clearly?
I'm able to hear you very clearly, Shivakumar.
Thanks so much, sir. Right. Yes. So now the Indus Valley civilization, the so-called Indus Valley civilization, which actually I'm saying so-called because I think today there is a lot of refined understanding about this entire time zone. In fact, I would strongly recommend you to listen to Dr. Nilesh Oak, who does a lot of research on Oriental Indic religion and then Indic history. And there's a lot of evidence that they are showing that it's at least a 17 to 18,000 years of unbroken history. Right? But then that's the reason why I say so-called Indus Valley civilization, because we all believe in what our history books tell us. And what do history books tell us? It says that some 3200 BC or something that they say that some, and then the people talk about the Aryan invasion theory, AIT it's called, and then they say that they were the people who brought Sanskrit here and all that. And today all these, let me just tell this group, learned group, all these theories are today challenged and then they have been proved to be false. They are falsified. Let's not believe in this Aryan invasion theory that into this country, somebody has come from outside, from Central Asia, and then they brought in some Sanskrit language, and then they brought in certain culture into a country where there was no culture. This is the kind of history that had to be rewritten by certain interested groups, because that's the only way they could rule over this country and proves that they're superior. And we are still imbibing that. We still believe that, of course, for want of better understanding of the whole thing. Okay, so without getting into that aspect, let me just tell, this has been one continuity of Bharatiya Samskriti for all these days, many. Even Puranas describe Bharatiya geography at many places. Let me just tell you something very interesting, at least from Ramayana. Rama spread along the nation as Rama, Lakshmana, and then Sita. We know the famous situation where they had to come out of the kingdom, Ayodhya, and then they had to move all the way to Chitrakuta and then south, down south. From there, the unfortunate incident happened, because of which Rama and Lakshmana had to move as far as Lanka. And then, of course, there's a lot of discussion that is going about the Lanka that is known at that time or has been written. Is it the same thing as the Sri Lanka that we talk about today or no? Okay, so there are lots of conversation about it, but our conversation is not about that. So let me just tell you, show you this thing. See, Ayodhya, and all these have been traced in Valmiki's Ramayana. Anyone interested can check it out. Ayodhya to Prayag, to Chitrakoot, to Satna, to Ramtek, to Panchavati, to Vandardhara, to Tuljapur, to Sureban, to Kardigud, to Koppal, to Hampi, to Tiruchirappalli, to Kodikkarai, to Ramantapuram, to Rameshwaram, and then from there to Vanter Mulai, some Vasga, Muad, Tunuvila. These are the places in Sri Lanka is what has been shown. Right. In fact, I think there is one particular place I went to that place in Sri Lanka where they talk about the hills where actually from where Rama's army came and then oversaw the Lanka, the palace of the Lanka, Ravana, and that is called Ramboda. That place is called Ramboda, where even Chinmaya Trust, Chinmaya Mission has an office in Sri Lanka. So whatever it is, those days with such less communication, and if this was not one nation, can you imagine how a Valmiki sitting somewhere in the north would really know about this accurate? In fact, the distances have been mentioned on how long they took. The distances, for example, when some of the distances mentioned also were about something like, when Rama was getting married to Sita in Mithila, how long did it take for Dasharatha and the queens to, first of all, how long did it take for the people, ambassadors, and then the ministers from Mithila, Janaka's ministers, coming to Ayodhya to give the news? And how long did it take for these people to come there to Mithila? This time was due. And then during this time, how Rama was given hospitality and then was made to given all Raja. And then he never, and what was his behavior towards the people around? Everything was given mentioned. Okay, so the distance is very, very accurate. Similarly, when Rama sets out of Ayodhya for the Vanvas, how long did it take for him on the chariot to go to a certain distance? Then how long did it take for them to cross the river Sarayu? And then how long did it take from them? How did they come to Chitrakoot? And everything was pictorially, how many days it took exactly. Everything was so beautifully given, right? So, and we know that along the path, there are so many places like Nasik and all, the Panchavati, where the signs of the Rama and Lakshmana and Sita living there, everything was captured very clearly, right? And so Rameshwaram, of course, is where the first Shivalingam was established by Rama. So all these things are there. If it were not one India, how would what was happening in North India be known in South India? Why would you find Rama temples everywhere in South India with equal emphasis and equal joy by people if this were not one India? So the knowledge that this was one Bharat was there in those days. And of course, we know about the way Bharatiyata comes out of even Ramayana, Rama's statement, Api Swarnamaya Lankan me Lakshmana Uchite. Janani Janmaj Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyesi, the very famous quotation of Rama, and where he says that one's mother and motherland are much greater than heaven itself, or superior than. So, in spite of whatever it is, coming back to my country is more important. So, I just tried to capture something from our Ramayana serial in the TV, so a little bit of so just for everybody's entertainment.
हे जननी जन्मभूमि, हे माता अयोध्या, आज मुझे तेरे चरणों में आने का सौभाग्य फिर से प्राप्त हुआ है। तेरा पुत्र राम तेरी पवित्र माटी को शत शत प्रणाम करता है। जननी जन्मभूमिश्च स्वर्गादपि।
Yes, so what is very important for me in this as a takeaway is the nobility, the idea they had about the motherland, the huge importance they gave to what was motherland and what was mother, the cultural value that was going on, so like a thread from those days to these days. Okay, later on I'll be talking about some of the modern independence, nationalists, and then what they talked about the country as a mother. So this thread, how could it continue without such a deep one nation spirit, is one of the aspects that we would like to answer. So now let me come to the next concept called what is Bharatiyata at all. And I would like to refer to something that Satya Sai Baba says, who I consider my guru and Lord. So he says in his book called Satya Sai Vahini, he says that first of all, a Bharatiya is someone who is proud that I'm a Bharatiya. So there's like a checklist, 4 points are coming, and then we can take it. That first of all, every Bharatiya is someone who is ready to check out that point called I'm a Bharatiya, a pride. Second, Bharatiya should be an ideal to others. Many times, Sri Satya Sai Baba says that if the entire world is like a train, Bharat is like an engine, and it has to guide this entire world. And truly, that's what every other great personage like Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda have quoted from time to time. Okay. And then the third checkpoint for a Bharatiya is placing national interest before self-interest. We have already seen from the verse of Krishna Yajurveda how national interest should be placed before self-interest. If there is a conflict that comes up between self-interest and national interest, then we need to give importance to national interest. Okay, and that is what we have seen as early as in 70 years back, 75 years back, or even 100 years back. When we look at the independence movement in this great country, we have seen how many people have laid down their lives for the sake of the country, right? So placing the national interest before the self-interest has been lived in this country. It is not just lip service. And then Bharatiya should adhere to Satya and Dharma. The fourth checkpoint that Swami gives is everyone who calls himself or herself a Bharatiya, they should be able to adhere to Satya and Dharma, right? So here, what is Satya and Dharma? Satya is the ability to be objective, truthful in one's conduct. Dharma is ability to carry out one's actions according to the way they should, or the way it is prescribed for their state of life or ashram. So these two, when they are able to do, every Bharatiya, it seems, are supposed to stick to it, Satya and Dharma. That is why they are Bharatiya. They are Bharatiyas. Now, another 4 points that he talks about is as characteristics of this unique Bharatiyata is we are a unique region of God-loving people. In fact, I'd be coming shortly and explaining you what is Bharata, what does it really mean. And Bharat also has a spiritual message delivered to the whole world, not just in the past, but it continues to deliver a spiritual message. We all know how the spiritual revolution went from this place everywhere to the world. And then now, of course, it's a different thing that we hear back from them because we prefer a particular way of communication. We prefer a particular way of presentation. Therefore, today we are ready to, but that's okay. Good information, good ideals, good values, when they are given from anywhere, they should be taken. The Bharat's role is cut out in shaping the world. Like I said, Swami very emphatically says we should be the engine before the bogies for a train. And tolerance to all other faiths of the world has been the hallmark of Bharat, as the hallmark of Bharat. So these are some of the things about Bharatiyata. And like I said, Swami says in India, the word nation meant the grouping together of hearts that beat time to the same song and that responded by similar vibration to the same spiritual call. Bharatiyas are Bharatiyas because of their spiritual leanings and spiritual seeding. This is a Divya Bhumi. This is, if one takes a birth here, it is because of certain spiritual, what I can say is benign or spiritual, beautiful, benign points that they have in their credit. It's a huge credit. And they have got this opportunity because coming here, somebody gets in their, right from their birth, in their blood, they get an access to the Bharatiya Samskriti, Bharatiya culture, Bharatiya scriptures, which tell you how to love God. Bharata means Bha refers to God or divinity. Rata refers to actually loving the God. Rata. So Satya Sai Baba says that we are a region of actually lovers of God. Right? And as a final thing, he says, what made this culture very great? And then ancient culture very great. He says, in spite of so many kingdoms, like I said, so many ways of culture, like, I heard Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev say once in a talk that in this country, you go every 50 miles and then you hear some different dialect, and you hear you see a different way of dressing, and you see a different kind of food and then tastes that they have. So that is the diversity we have in this huge country. And nevertheless, you have commonality. You have our festivals, our gods, our belief systems. They just unite us like just one piece, and we call ourselves Indians. And suffering, the multitude of attacks that happened on this country, that did not deter its culture. And Vedas are the bedrock of universal spirituality. Call it any subdivision in Hinduism. And then Hinduism is a word that we have to use with a lot of caution, because Bharatiya is a word I would prefer to use. The early settler, the early people who came to visit this country, because they came from Sindhu river, and the way they could not pronounce Sindhu became Hindu, and then gradually the Hindu became Indian, and Sindhu became Indus. So what is very interesting is that this name that we take today to be our name is a given name. That's not the name that actually this country was referred to by itself, by its own people for very, very, very long time. It's only in the last few years that people knew. In fact, if you go back and then see, the Americans referred to Indians, the South Americans referred to Indians by a different name. I can't pronounce these names. The Chinese referred to Indians by a different name. Yangtze or whatever it is. So these are very interesting. So it is not that India is a name that has come just from an ancient technique. In the word India has come, the name India has come more because of mispronunciation of the word Sindhu. But Sindhu doesn't define India. This is Himalayas here, that is the Sindhu there, and then here is the Indian Ocean. So why do we actually talk about only Sindhu? So Indians cannot be represented. India might not be the very right name. Now that's a very it's some statement that I don't want to make, because today we are used to India, so we better use India. But Vedas have been the most common bedrock of entire universal spirituality. Okay, that's what we'll find when we go deeper. Hopefully, in this on this platform one day, some great erudite scholar who is good in Vedas, who is an expert in Vedas, can tell us why Vedas are the bedrock of universal spirituality. Right? And then this country always harped on never-changing supreme reality, and it said that the Lord, like the truth, cannot change from time to time. Bharatiyas do not accept the two reasons why this is a great culture. Swami says, Bharatiyas do not accept the belief held by people belonging to other countries that the universe is manifested a few thousand years ago, that will be destroyed finally and forever at the same future day. May I request everybody to please mute? Can you please mute? Check your microphones. It's a request, please mute. Okay. Indians will not accept the theory that the universe arose out of nothing. Now, this is again another scientific concept that today we talk about. They believe that the universe or this objective creation is beginningless and endless, which means that it is a projection. That's the right word used by Swami Vivekananda. It's a projection that is cast on the screen and then taken back, cast on the screen and taken back. There is neither beginning nor ending for that. There is a manifestation and a recall of manifestation. So that's the best way to explain it. And let us look at some other people who said this. The greats, like Sri Aurobindo says, India is not just a piece of land, not merely a collection of people. It's a conscious spiritual being, a divine power, a Shakti, Devi, goddess. India is Mother India, a living form of the Divine Mother. For Sri Aurobindo, it is Savitri. And then for him, who was actually a great nationalist, a great patriot, an independence leader of a great sort, and then how he matured into spirituality of such a height. And then it is said that much of India's independence, he has been a great reason, causing not from the forefront by being a political personage, but being a spiritual personage behind that. Okay. So let's pay our homage to this great motherland, the Lord, the goddess, the mother. Once more. So that is what Sri Aurobindo says. Now let us look at what this wonderful personage says. When the real history of India will be unearthed, it will be proved that as in matters of religion, so in fine arts, India is the primal guru of the whole world. Okay? In a specific context, he was saying this. And let us see our own Netaji, what he says. Nationalism is inspired by the highest ideals of the human race. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. If those three words sound familiar, it is the description of the absolute consciousness. Right? So that is what nationalism is all about. So for all these people, there was no difference between God and then nation. We see that all these people have equated both of them. They were highest level of spiritualists who just shifted to complete nation building at times and then could easily move into the realm of again spirituality at will. So we see that today, we following a path of spirituality is very diverse from just being ourselves in our puja rooms or being religious. It is much more than what actually we do on a normal basis, and there is a lot more that can be done. So let us look at what this is all about. Some nation builders of ancient Bharat. I would start with the Vivaswan, the Surya himself, and then how to time him. He's the Srustyadi, I said, and he's the first one who followed, who actually gave. In fact, it is told in the Gita that the wisdom that Lord Krishna was giving to Arjun was actually, he says, is the same wisdom that was given by Vivaswan to Ikshvaku at the beginning of the creation. Right? So Vivaswan, or the sun, is a symbol of yajna itself. He is a symbol of selfless action to the highest level. He comes every day and then he is there to give himself up for millions of years. And because of sun, we are all there. We live, the photosynthesis happens, we owe our lives to sun. There's a reason why. You call it ritual or whatever. In this country, they said, in this ancient Samskriti, they said, just go every day morning, and when the sun comes, offer a little water to him, and then fold your hands to him, and then thank him in gratitude for everything that sun does for us, for our existence. So where is this? In how many places do you find this technology of understanding what actually is the primal cause of our living itself? Right? So therefore, this culture that flows from this wonderful personage called Surya. For us, Surya is not a planet or not a globe, it is a Devata. And then, of course, if you go as back as Satyayuga, you have people like Harishchandra. Now, these were nation builders because they had laid down the principle that give up your life, entire life for any one thing called Satya. And then great things can happen around you. The whole world will come to your feet. People will talk about you for everywhere. And then right from those days of Satyayuga to Satyagraha of Mahatma Gandhi, we know how Harishchandra, just looking at the drama of Harishchandra, Satya Harishchandra, the young Mahatma Gandhi got so much inspired for his Satyagraha. So this is what he can do. That is the cultural aspect, Samskriti aspect of what Harishchandra stood for. Then, of course, you have in the Treta Yuga, Rama himself. And in those days, where, for example, many things were very, very different in the royal kingdoms and all that. In fact, Rama's own father, Dasharatha, we know, he had many wives. They talk about the three wives, but he had many wives. It was a common thing in those days, or all those kind of things. But Rama came and then set out one principle saying that, no, one man, one woman, one wife. Okay, so here was one personage, one leader who set up the trend for the country, for the future. And he said that follow an ideal, be a perfect man first. And then, of course, come Dwapara Yuga, we have this great Lord Krishna, who was more than life image, who was actually capable of so many things. But we cannot aspire to be like him for his life, but we should aspire to follow his teachings. And that's why he's Jagat Guru. And so Bhagavad Gita, and as it has been given, even today, you go into any Indian family, Hindu family, and you'll find a copy of this Gita. But it probably is a different thing that how many people are trying to understand the teachings that are given there. I'm very sure many people are doing it these days. And then, so Gita, again, things like Gita are such wonderful teachings from this great nation builder. And then way back, you come into as early as 400 BC. And then when so many faiths and so many divergent views were coming up in the country everywhere, there was this great personage called Buddha who came. And then Gautama, who said that, no, this is the wrong way to approach life. And he said that, first of all, ask what is troubling your life and what is suffering. Understand that and then try to eliminate that. Find certain answers and solutions for your life, then everything will be fine. Don't actually get into all these things. So unnecessary karma and all those aspects. So that was the teaching required at that time. Then you have the wonderful 7th century giant, Shankaracharya, who came, who actually managed the situation post-Buddha, in terms of what sort of negativity was happening, and then anti-Veda trends were coming up, where people did not understand the brighter aspect of Veda, but were getting carried away by the ritual part, which were actually passing because of in the medieval ages. And then he came and then streamlined everything through his Advaita principle. So these were all. Today we so easily say that Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. We say that it's all fatherhood of God and brotherhood of man. But what is so easily said was actually is an offspring of greats like Shankaracharya, who actually understood, found out, discovered and understood, and then gave a perfect explanation of the Upanishadic truths in terms of Advaita, saying that all this is one. And such impeccable logic, impeccable Shastra, and the way they aligned everybody onto this, right from the highest level in Jammu and Kashmir to the southmost tip, Tuticorin, in this country, east and west. And then he set up ashramas and mutts everywhere, Sringeri, the Joshi Mutt, and then everywhere. So this was Shankaracharya, who within 32 years has done so much for building this nation. Now, these were the kind of people who built actually this nation, and then whatever today we enjoy as what we call Samskriti. And what are let us also look at some of the nation builders of the modern Bharat. We have in 1828, Rani Jhansi Lakshmi Bai, who taught this entire world that it's not about men. Today, a lot of people in the world talk about women's liberation and then women being at the forefront of leadership. And even today, there is such gender discrimination in some of those so-called, advanced countries that how can people know what was the status of women in this country? People have a wrong notion about this, completely about this country. This country, as early as 1828, Rani Jhansi Lakshmi Bai came up and then stood in front of this entire powerful East India Company and said that, no, you can't do this to us. And then, of course, the 1863 saw Swami Vivekananda come, and then whatever he did was history. And then 1872, we had 15th August, incidentally, his birthday happens to be our Independence Day, and that is Sri Aurobindo. And 1856, Lokmanya Balganga Tilak, that is such an erudite scholar in Gita and then the Upanishads. And then he was such a great reporter. He was such a great patriot and nationalist. And today, much of what happens in Maharashtra, entire Maharashtra, as the Ganesh movement, Ganesh Chaturthi movement, is all because of Sri Balganga Tilak. And Mahatma Gandhi, of course, the spiritualist, that minimalist who hardly needed anything for himself, and then someone who had that amazing capability to bring everybody onto one thread and then make a difference to what is called ultimately the independence of this country. And of course, he was not alone. We had our Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. We had the great visionary Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and who was our first prime minister, of course. And then he was, to a few credits to him, he had a lot of, in fact, most of us won't know one thing about Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and why I call him the great modernist. Under his regime, that was the time when actually most of the subcontinent countries were trying to characterize themselves in terms of who they are. And Pakistan, of course, they said that we are Pakistan, we are the land of the pure, and then we are not a secular country, we are a Islam country. That was the definition. Though, in fact, Jinnah is said to have told at the beginning that we want to be secular, but after the formation was that they very clearly defined that we are an Islam country. Okay. And then down south, Sri Lanka, they defined themselves as a Buddhist country. And then there are some other people who defined themselves as a Bangladesh, which defined themselves in a different country. And these people were dividing themselves either by a religion, faith, or by a language. They are characterizing. So any region that got characterized and then divided like that was actually a loss to them. Then thereafter, we have seen what sort of losses they went through and then what kind of problems they went through. This big country, large country right in the center, and somebody like Nehru had the vision to define secularism as everything. Here, there is nothing. That is, if somebody defined Bharatiya, Bharat as a Hindu's country that day, and predominantly as some Hindi-speaking country, we would have had so many mutinies there in this country. And based on the language itself, a lot of mutiny happens. Okay, so there was this. There were two options they had at the time to divide the country, the states into whether it was a region-based division or it was a more of a community-based division. But they said that okay, language can be given, and then language-based division was done, because of which there was enough healthy kind of resistance as well as a good coexistence that was possible. And of course, without Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who was actually instrumental in getting about 500 kingdoms back into Indian constitution under Indian Union, today what we call Bharat. And that's why the Article 1 of Constitution starts as India, that is Bharat. That's how it is. It goes, India, that is Bharat. And without him, it would have been impossible. This country would have been in total turmoil. That's why most of the British, when they left this country, they made a prediction saying that this new democracy is not going to last. Yeah, they are going to have huge problems in future. They're going to fight within themselves. We were the East Indian Company that were keeping it all together. And then these people cannot rule themselves. Let us just imagine, in today's business parlance, if we have to use, India in 1947 was like a startup company. And it was a very vulnerable startup company. And then, so everybody predicted its death. Everybody predicted it's getting washed out. And today, after 35 years, we are still strong. And can we think that this is not possible if there's a very strong Samskriti that was passing as a linkage right from the day? It's not today's country. Right? So this is something that we need to understand. So, but then there is one question we have to answer. Why did such a glorious culture fade? Of course, we know the invasions. Bharatiya culture, particularly in the last 100 years, it was like a suspended animation for us. Then it came to Swami Vivekananda to rebuild it and rejuvenate it. He said, strength is life, weakness is death. So he marched and he told the world what this nation stood for and what is its ancient pristine glory. I'll try to see if I have here. I don't think I have what he said in the historic address in Chicago. I'll try to share it. But he does say about what actually India stood for in its pristine glory. How we always sheltered people from all parts of the world and how we accepted them in our culture. So these were some of the things. So we need to understand overall that India was not born in 1947 or 50. 47 because of the independence, or 50 because of the republic nature that we took from there. It is not that we are born there. Even today, we find in our constitution, as Articles 29 and 30 are extensions of the same principle of tolerance, which had purely a spiritual basis. So if we forget that India is a spiritual country, we are gone. We are not just a mass of geographical conglomerate. And now look at some of the aspersions on India by colonial oppressors. They said only because of railways and post office, India became one nation. Eric Hoffman says the West had no sense of nation and nationalism till 18th century. They never knew. In fact, I do not know how many of you are aware. Some of the worst politics that happened from the Europe way back, I think in the I could be wrong. I think this was in the 18th century. There was a conference that happened in Europe, and then they were talking about Africa. Already they went to the Americas, North America, and they started actually massacring and killing the people out there, the natives, and then they started occupying. It was not one nation. If you look at the geographical map of America in the what they call as the first independence, it was a very small, tiny portion towards the east. You'll find it was just some of those parts, the Mississippi part, and some of those parts, the areas, and then only gradually across the time, it took almost till 1920. By the time what we call as the United States of America today, that we know of as a entire continent today, has formed only after that. Yes, and these people are there to tell us about Jambu, where Jambudvipam was there for as long as ever, and where all these kingdoms were all together under one rule, one nation, as one nation forever. They all come and tell us how to be like a nation, and then they say that we brought you as a nation. So Eric Hoffman, their own researcher, says that Europe was not even a nation till recent times, and India has always been one. India has always seen wars and hatred within its boundaries. We did. This was the aspersion, right? And you know, how many of you? I mean, most of you might be aware that we had what is called Ashwamedha Yagam, and Rama did it, Yudhishthira did it, and many kings did it. Ashwamedha Yagam. Ashwamedha Yagam was a very symbolic yagam that was done by emperors after they gained certain level of power and then certain fairness in the way they ruled people. And what they used to do is that they wanted to spread this fairness of ruling and good governance to neighboring places where probably there were weak kings. So they used to create a sovereignty by sending out after a yajnam that was done with in all spiritual sense, they used to send out a horse, and wherever the horse went, people either fight with these people, this king, or give up and then become their subordinates. So if they became subordinates, they left the country to them. Unlike these Western invaders and then all those invaders who came to India, they never went and looted and plundered them. Our way of invasion was they took over, they let that person be as a subordinate. They used to go have one representative there who used to guide them about what is good governance. Rama did it. Otherwise, why would Rama do Ashwamedha? Right? And then he sent Shatrughna as the person who accompanied the horse everywhere. And then we know about the famous Lavanasura war that happens with Shatrughna. So Ashwamedha Yagam in spiritual sense is symbolic of mind, the war that you do against your own mind, right? And we always did Dharma Yuddham as early as when the Dutch came. When the Dutch came to I think to Kerala sometime, and then one of the Kerala kings was there, and then they land on this seashore. And then they come and then they want to attack. And then they see a few people. They said, send word to your king. We are come to actually take over this entire kingdom. The king comes out with his retinue. He greets them. He gives them some fruits, etc. And he says, well, have you come in peace or war? And he says, of course, we are going to wage a war. That's what these people say, the Dutch. And then the king says, well, then very well, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock we'll assemble in this place, and then we are going to have a war, and the war is going to happen till evening 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, after which we'll see whether we need to do the war, continue the war tomorrow. Now, somebody will be surprised. What is this happening? Is it a war or is it a one-day match that is happening, cricket match, right? So then next day morning they come. And then the kings come, and then the kings actually come and then shake the hands. Then they blow the conch, and then they set out the rules saying that somebody on the chariot is going to fight somebody on the chariot. Somebody who was on the ground is going to fight somebody on the ground. Somebody on the horse is going to fight somebody on the horse. And if anybody is going to drop their weapon and say, I surrender, nobody touches them and nobody kills them. And nobody kills somebody who has already fallen down and then wounded. Nobody touches women or the children. All these rules were laid out. Now the Dutch had a spin of their head. They said, what? Is this war or is this a game? What are you saying? This is India. How can the world understand what is India? How can barbaric traditions understand what is India? A culture that was so huge. This Dharma Yuddham happened. The Dharma Yuddham that happened in Kurukshetra itself, they said the Dharma was actually coming down. That was the complaint they had. Now imagine the Dharma Yuddham that used to happen before that. Yuddhams happened. Yuddham was never seen as a conflict or as something raw, bad. But Yuddham was done in all spirit, pretty much like today the war, today the one-day international separate cricket matches. Of course, it's a different thing that if it's an India-Pakistan cricket match, it becomes more than a war for us today. But then that's the way they did Dharma Yuddham. And India has marginalized sections of people by way of caste system. This is one of the aspersions. And you find a lot of insight in Bhagavad Gita about Chaturvarnam, where Krishna says, Maya Srishti. I am the one who created it. And it was based on Guna Karma Vibhagasvu. It is based on two things. It is not based on Janma. Nowhere Janma is mentioned. So nobody was regarded as a Brahmin by birth or a Kshatriya by birth or a Vaishya by birth or a Shudra by birth in this country, earlier days. It's all the medieval selfishness, polluted thinking that has brought about these concepts, which unfortunately is taken by the modern generation as something that was what is India. That is not Bharat. That is not Bharatiya. Bharatiya was based on Guna Karma. Why is such a beautiful system? The skills, the expertise should not be lost. Therefore, when you create a system, a genealogy by way of a legacy, by way of one particular, a Brahmin's son learns the Shastras and then retains the Shastras for the kingdom. And then a Kshatriya's son learns archery and then retains that. A Vaishya's son learns the business techniques and then retains that economy. And then a Shudra's son retains those kind of things in this entire society, and everybody is doing their bit and they're experts in what they do. What a beautiful corporate structuring. Today we do structuring in the corporates, right? And then we say that that's a great structuring. But what is structuring? This was at the level of society, the largest corporate. And then how beautifully it was done until certain forces come down. So today don't we see politics coming up in the structuring of the corporates? So it can easily be understood in thousands of years of history how politics would have come into this Varna system. And then therefore the caste system was created, which was weaving around the interests of certain people who got power and then who were trying to become powerful. This was more of borrowed kind of cleverness that people exhibited rather than the originality of the Samskriti. And even policymakers of today do not seem to understand this actually about it. That's an unfortunate part. And even because they use it only for the vote bank to actually get votes citing caste system, as if the system itself is bad. They don't understand what it is all about. Right? So the religion spirituality paradox, and that is what actually is the oppression, colonial or oppressor says, as they lay down as one aspiration. Religion, the word is not a bad word, but today it's become a bad word. Religion actually refers to reconnecting with God. But over the abuse of so many hundreds of years, the word religion today, because of the way politicization happens, is completely, definitely, probably we should do away with that word. And spirituality is being adhered to by most younger generation, which is fine. It doesn't matter what nomenclature we use, but the theme of the whole thing is only one thing. In India, the religion or spirituality is only one thing: love for God, that is Bharatiyata, and then live for the values, and then Satya and Dharma, that is the way of living. Right? So Indians learned education culture only from the British. That's another aspersion that comes up. Need not talk about it because if you just went into Indian Samskriti, Indian Sahityam, the entire Vangmayam, the entire scriptures, I don't know who has to educate whom. And then the Samskriti that India was, wherein women were emancipated as early as the Sita's times, and then they had the highest, when you look at some of those great scholars of the past, the Rishipatnis and all, who were women, one has to understand what was the culture in Samskriti here as compared to what is being touted as a culture outside, right? So these are some things that come up. Okay, all this is fine. So now we talk about a nation building. What does nationalism mean today, and what does spiritualism mean today for the modern generation? Just sharing some thoughts from Vivekananda's thought process, and then some of the modern thinkers, how they reflect upon what youth can do. The intelligence of people affects the importance of a country. All people together working for the country is nation building. The future generation is an integral part of the country. For a better future, giving importance to the youth is necessary. Youth is the most active part of the country. All sorts of creativity can be found if we look through the minds of the youth. So with this, with these few points, what I found is that it is very important that we spread platforms like Swarohan and many more platforms, spread actually what is Bharatiyata, and then bring back the pride in the youth about this nation. Without that, it is impossible, I feel, for Indian youth to contribute back to this nation, make this great. Okay, I'm not necessarily talking about brain drain or anything like that. I'm talking about the notion you have. Bharatiya is a Bharatiya wherever they are. And it is not about Hindutva. It is not about being certain bigoted religion or a dogma. It is about the God-loving nature that people have. I feel many people who belong to different geographies today, different countries, maybe they be American or whatever, can still be called Bharatiya because they share the same value system of the Samskriti that this country talks about. This this Samskriti is not limited to certain people who are living in this nation. Because if it is only about the people living in this geography, we have criminals also living in the geography. So it's not about that. It is about people's mind, attitude, mind share. And then it could be that people living anywhere in the world, they should hold. So our request to youth is that wherever you go, wherever you settle down, understand first that you are a Bharatiya, live up to the Samskriti of this country by being closer to God, love God, and then spread love in your walk and talk as you go by. And whoever comes across you, a person of a different nationality, they should look at you and then say that, wow, where do you come from? And then what is the Samskriti out there? Let me also learn a little bit about it. So if this is the way that things can happen, I think everybody is doing their job beautifully. Now, today, in order to build the nation, do we need to do conventions and meetings? We take out processions, we shout slogans, we ban foreign goods and countries from our active list, we speak only in native languages, do we wear only Indian dresses, do we become a Gandhian, do we write blogs on nationalism, and do we raise a tirade against corruption? What is that we need to do? None of this need to be done for nation building. And I got it from my mentor, Guru, God, that we have to do only actually two things. We have to take care of Satya and Dharma. We have to stand by these absolute values. They're eternal and they are going to build the country. We need not go and then do much for the country. But however, in practical viewpoints, I have put in 7 paradigms by which we can, all of us, this is the last point I'm making, all of us can actually, every youth and every person in this country can build a great nation. And that doesn't mean that any of these previous things we need to do, go out in the streets and all that. Being whatever we are, we can build the nation by just doing this. We need to increase our contribution mentality and we need to bring down our consumption mentality. And how do we do it? In 7 steps. First, we bring down our reactive mentalities, reactive tendencies, and we build more of responsive tendencies. And in one line, what that I'm just going to say one line about each. What that means is that we need to be more emotionally intelligent by giving a little gap between not getting emotional about anything and then raising tirade against every other faith and every other thing at the drop of a hat. Somebody sends up something in WhatsApp or whatever saying that they are doing this against you and all that, and then people are incensed and then try to go and then develop some hatred towards other people. No, this is not Bharatiyata. So we stop being reactive and we start being responsive. Bharatiya stood for always tolerance. That's what we have seen throughout this presentation. We move away from income. We all are working professionals, and then we move away from income orientation to outcome orientation. If only we can talk about what we can increase as a GDP for the country, how productive I can be. Instead of talking, money will come. Income is supposed to be a byproduct. Outcome is supposed to be a straight product. But instead today, when we go for interviews, we are asking, how much salary will I get? That seems to be the first point actually that we are getting into. This is not going to build the country. This is not a nation building practice. This is actually a wrong practice. We should move ourselves to the outcome orientation than income orientation. Yeah, income will come anyway. We need to move from the comfort principle onto effort principle. And the amount of effort that was taken up by these independence leaders, the Mahatmas, who gave up everything for the sake of the country, and then further many more people. And when these people are our inspiration, effort, if we focus on comfort to hota hai life mein, then we do get that comfort, but we should move away from that comfort zone to the effort zone. And then we need to move from an earning focus to a learning focus. So earning focus gives us an arrogance thinking that I have certain skill and capability, therefore I should be paid so much. Whereas a learning focus says that, okay, when I'm getting a learning from something, actually I owe it something. Incidentally, they pay me something that is bonus. So this is a great attitude of gratitude that we develop when we have a learning focus. And we need to move from a blame culture to praise culture. Okay, so oftentimes in our families and in our entire societies, in our corporates, we are so fast to judge somebody and then we get into blame. We get into blame. And instead of that, if each of us can start practicing a little bit of praise, start looking at the positive aspects in somebody and then give a little bit of clap for them and a little bit of pat on the back for them, that's a huge movement in terms of actually influencing others and inspiring them to contribute too. And we move from a me, which is a selfish culture, to we, which is a collaborative culture. So we need to develop more of teamwork in this country. We have been where for very long time being, we are trying to be individual players, and then our entire education system is touted in such a way, it is put in such a way that it makes individual players out of us. So instead, if we focus a little bit on group culture, team culture, and then we synergize well, we let everybody play their role, we appreciate each other and celebrate each other's success, and then we also are part and we hold hands when people are failing a little bit, and then we give them their support. I think we can be the greatest nation in this world. And if we move from the take culture to give culture, right? So instead of saying that I need, what you are going to give me, instead, if we ask the question every day morning when we go to our offices, every day evening when we are coming back to our homes, if we ask the question just before we start our work and just before we come to home, what am I going to give them? How am I going to make a little difference in their lives? If this leadership aspect is shown, I think it makes a whole lot of difference in terms of our contribution mentality and not consumption mentality. So when I thought through, I felt that the best way we can in this 21st century, as we are moving into this, how do we treat nationalism? How do we make this nation proud? How do we make increase our GDP? How do we make this country the #1 country in the world? Not because we need to compete, but because we need to be an engine to draw this entire train. I felt that these are the 7 steps that we can do. Their paradigm shifts from one to another: reaction to response, income orientation to outcome orientation, comfort zone to effort zone, earning orientation to learning orientation, blame culture to praise culture, me consciousness to we consciousness, and then taking culture to giving culture. So this is the paradigm shift that we need to do, is what I felt. And as we wind up, I just wanted to all of us to stand where we are, and then please get together for our national anthem. So that's about it. I do not know, Narayananji, if we really have any scope for any conversations, because time is up, but I leave it to you. I hand it over to you, please. Thank you.
Shivakumarji, speechless. I mean, what do we say after such a session? Spellbound. I think, I have understood Bharatiya. Personally, I can say, much more, than the connotations that I had about being Bharatiya. About the question on, whether we should have Q&A, I think we can take some time. If somebody has a pressing question, they want to, have answered, we can definitely do that, because there may be some, really strong question running in, people's mind, and they want to have it answered. Then please feel free. I don't want anybody to lose the moment and the opportunity here. And feeling privileged and proud that, Swarohan is the platform that, got to, hear such an amazing, description. I will also summarize the points after the Q&A shortly, in a short manner, but I will leave it to, anybody has any open question at this point.
Hello, sir. Good evening. This is Karthik here.
Yes, Karthik.
Could you hear me? Sir, it was wonderful, sir. I was really completely immersed in the process of going through this. So a little bit about at what stage we currently are in the process of nation building, in actually, fostering very good knowledge amongst the intellectuals. We see that gap sometimes happening with intellectuals also. So how and at what stage we currently are in the process of this, what we are trying to achieve for the country and for the world at large. So that's what I would like to just understand, sir. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, my attempt to answer that would be
Yes.
coming out of a lot of ignorance, Karthi, because to be honest, I'm not aware of all the attempts that are happening, but I am aware of some attempts that are happening at a global level. In fact, I would refer you to certain video series called Sangam Talks or Swijan Talks, where you will find a lot of people who are researching on Indology and then trying to understand what actually is the historicity of this Bharatiya. Yeah. And they are bringing out with evidence a lot of aspects about where it stands. So this is one intellectual part. The second part is that I think we are having on the business forefront and corporate forefront a lot of wonderful startup people, entrepreneurs in this country, youngsters who are trying to make this country proud in terms of how they are contributing. We are having equally capable people and a lot of wonderful people in entertainment industry, music, fine arts, who are trying to contribute their own way. So everybody is doing India great, no doubt about it. However, the only the common line that we try to present in this entire presentation is that Bharatiyata means that each of us can do our bit, and by first feeling the pride that we are a Bharatiya. And then second being trying to be a role model, which means that we need to do certain sacrifices, because if you need to be a role model, we need to do certain sacrifices to stand as an example to anybody in this world. And the third part is that we need to adhere to Satya and Dharma. And so these are two important values that we need to. So there is it's a different conversation. Sometimes if for Swarohan, we are we can look at, for example, what is Dharma, because Dharma is very deep concept. And somebody like me, I'm too small actually to examine it, but in my own way, I would be very happy to give my viewpoints about how we can uphold Dharma in whatever we do. Because this understanding is very important. No university and then no academics is teaching us how to adhere to Dharma. That's unfortunate.
In fact, I had the next question if I had an opportunity. I thought of asking, why is it getting so difficult to convince even an intellectual in this country? That's what my fundamental question is. It's getting too tough to convince anybody to, adhere the path of divinity, move forward in a spiritual aspect, and also come together, glue as human beings, just for that matter.
Right. I think, Karthik, the reason could be of the years and years of conditioning that has started happening. And then actually, in a particular way, I should say, the English oppressors, the British oppressors, the way they started this entire education system, they achieved what they wanted in a particular way. But again, thank God, today, divine grace, things are reviving, and then we are getting back. There are lots of votaries of what actually is our culture. And we had avatars walk on this wonderful land, and then so it cannot die so easily. So it will get revived, but the revival of a country, revival of a nation culture takes years. It takes centuries sometimes. So it's a process. I think the U-turn has happened. The walk back is starting. Otherwise, we would not have this session today, for example.
Right, exactly.
And the U-turn has happened.
True, sir,
it's just a matter of time. And then most of the youngsters would see in their own lifetimes how this country is going to. Today, we have I'm not any votary of any particular party or whatever, but we have as an example, a prime minister who stands tall in terms of his selflessness.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not talking about anybody's decision-making policies or whatever. I don't want to get into those things. But I'm talking about someone who stands so tall because of his selflessness. And then now, is this possible in this Kali Yuga? I think the U-turn has happened. The U-turn has happened.
True, sir. I understand what you are intending exactly. Yes. That's very much, that can keep the country very much glued, and we can have one nation concept, and then we can build it forward to foster humanity. In fact, the spirituality is a weapon to foster more humanity into the minds of much more it's needed with the young talents and young individuals who are coming into different spaces in the field of entertainment or all that you talked about, music, or that's what is needed exactly. We need to feel hope is very bright, and confidence is quite intact, sir. I really got a lot of inputs, and also I am very much enthusiastic now after hearing from this. I'll try to do my best in spreading something good
Wonderful.
and also positive for the country and also for the
Wonderful.
well-being
Wonderful.
of
Thanks.
humans.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot.
And like you said, Karthi, it's all up to the youth. 80% work will be done only by the youth, and 20% would be done by the experienced people if they are mentors, if they stand as mentors and
Correct.
not as tormentors. Okay, so that's what we should be very careful about.
Yes, correct. Thanks a lot, sir. Narayanan, sir, thanks a lot for giving this opportunity to me.
Thank you, Karthik, for the
Thank
question.
you.
Wonderful question, which triggers a lot of insights from the responses. And
Privilege
thank you,
is all mine. Thank you
Shivakumar-ji.
so much, sir.
And so anybody has any other question before I give a small summary? Okay, I guess we're good for the summary. So Shivakumar-ji, my summary will be a very weak one because the session has been grand with a lot of deep as well as very relevant and important thoughts. But all the same, you started off with the Sankalpa very beautifully. We sometimes keep saying that without understanding what we're talking about. Okay. You took references from the Vedas, and you brought out the significant aspect of the unifying thread of Bharatiyata through the Vedas, through Ramayana example, through the historical progression, right from the pre-Vedic times to Vedic times to after that, and brought forth the point that nationalism is or Bharatiyata is not just post-independence. It already and always existed. And then taking the example of the motherland as not just a motherland or the divine mother, but as an epitome of cultural value, and points on placing the national interest before the self-interest, which always existed throughout, and the great examples from Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, Adi Shankaracharya, and many such examples, and the right apt examples to instill into the minds, so that sometimes all these are there with us, but we don't go there and benefit from them. Not just benefit, but also benefit so that we can benefit others from them, which are also the points that brought out. Satyam Shivam Sundaram. And this I never knew came from Sri Subhash Chandra Bose. It was so beautiful. And again, all the examples of the Ashwamedha Yagam and Dharma Yuddham, such lovely, beautiful points, where rules and values were followed even in a state of war. Right. That's how valuable it can get in terms of values. And the points on the Varna system, the caste system, and the of course everything was awesome, but what struck me the most was you brought it to a point where you said at the end of the day, spirituality, nationalism, right? These, at the fulcrum of all this, at the core of all this, is a value system. So you brought out that the extensibility to the entire universe, right, which is basically the universality of all this. And that is the that is why people flock from various places to India. When things get out of control, they can't handle it anymore, they come here to gain the wisdom. So this is the fundamental aspect that you so beautifully brought out. And what can I say about the the paradigm shift that you talked about, and all this so beautifully explained within 60 minutes. And 60 minutes, but I don't know even a lifetime or 60 lifetimes to actually go deep into this. And there's so much to understand and so much to fathom, but you have given it to us in a capsule so that we can start implementing it right away. I hope we all take these takeaways, share it with others, and start implementing this. We would already be implementing some of it, but take it further and make it a part of daily life. So Shivakumar-ji, Sashtang Namaskar to you. I don't know what to say, but this is really a great, a value addition. I think to the entire nation, and I think to the entire world at large, is what I would go on to say.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Narayanji, I just wanted to thank you, Dinakarji, Swarohan, and all the wonderful friends who have joined this to be, because more than any talk by anybody, I feel that this is more like a conversation. Just me expressing some thoughts, and then this is such a wonderful platform. And I'm so glad that there are people, all our hearts are beating together, like Swami said in one of the things, all our hearts beat for the country. So I personally thank you from my heart for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Shivakumarji. Thanks everyone present here, for joining. And please continue to join for, forthcoming, such really, unique and, rare sessions. And so that, we can all march along, to be the best and make everyone become the best. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
ఇప్పుడు
Namaskar.
వెళ్తున్నా.